I never thought a simple curiosity could change my life forever. My name is Ryan, and for as long as I can remember, I had lived in a world of quiet routines, blending in, never drawing attention. I had friends, hobbies, and a steady life as a junior graphic designer at a small agency downtown. But despite the comfort of my normalcy, there was always a part of me that wondered what it would feel like to be someone else, someone lighter, softer, more delicate. Emma had been my girlfriend for 2 years, vibrant, adventurous, and fearless in ways that made my heart race. She loved experimenting with fashion and had a wardrobe that could rival a boutique. I admired her confidence, the way she could wear anything and command attention without effort. And secretly, I envied her. Not her beauty, exactly, but the freedom she had in her identity, the way she could express herself fully without hesitation. It started innocently enough. One evening, while she was at her weekly yoga class, I found myself staring at her closet. I had promised I'd never touch her things without permission, but curiosity got the better of me. The textures, the colors, the possibilities, they whispered to me, teasing a part of myself I had long ignored. I hesitated at first, my hands hovering over the hangers, before I selected a simple, elegant dress she had worn to a small gathering a month ago. It was light blue, flowing, and soft against my fingertips. I took it into the bedroom, heart pounding, and hesitated again. This was a line I had never crossed, and yet the thrill of the forbidden was intoxicating. I had always admired crossdressers online, fascinated by the transformations they shared. But I had never dared imagine it for myself. Now, with Emma's dress in my hands, I felt the first flutter of excitement mingled with fear. Standing in front of the mirror, I slipped into the dress. The fabric was cool against my skin, soft and alien, yet familiar in a way I hadn't anticipated. My reflection startled me. My broad shoulders and boyish frame made the dress hang differently than it would on Emma, but as I adjusted the hem and smoothed the fabric, I caught a glimpse of something new. My reflection was both me and not me, a shadow of identity that felt thrillingly close. I fumbled for the makeup Emma kept in her vanity drawer. Lip gloss, light foundation, a touch of mascara, simple, subtle. I wanted to experiment without changing too much, to see if I could pass even in the smallest sense. As I dabbed the makeup on, my hands trembled slightly. The sensation was intoxicating, electrifying, and deeply personal. For the first time, I felt a curious blend of vulnerability and liberation. It wasn't just the clothes. It was the way I carried myself, the slight shift in posture, the softening of my movements. Every step across the room felt exaggerated, every motion imbued with a femininity I had only admired from a distance. I couldn't help but smile at the reflection, marveling at how a few simple changes, fabric, lipstick, mascara, could reshape not just my appearance, but my perception of myself. The thrill, however, was tempered by fear. Emma could walk in at any moment. What if she found me like this? Would she laugh, be angry, or worse, be disappointed? My pulse quickened at the thought, and I realized how fragile my secret was. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to leave the outfit. I was mesmerized, trapped between exhilaration and panic. I took a few tentative steps toward the living room, practicing the balance, the sway, the subtle grace that Emma seemed to command effortlessly. The sensation of high heels on my feet, unfamiliar and slightly precarious, made every movement deliberate. I felt exposed, yet powerful in a strange, intoxicating way. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed distorted in the dim glow of my bedroom. I experimented with different hairstyles, tilting my head, adjusting my posture, imagining what it would be like to live just a day as someone else. Someone softer, more delicate, undeniably feminine. And then, the most shocking realization struck me. I didn't want to stop. Not really. The thrill, the transformation, the sense of exploring a hidden part of myself, it was addictive. I could feel a shift deep inside, a questioning of identity, a fascination with the idea of becoming someone else entirely, even temporarily. By the time Emma returned, The adrenaline had ebbed into a nervous excitement. I hastily removed the dress, hurriedly wiping away any traces of makeup, and folded the outfit neatly, pretending as though nothing had happened. She came in with her usual warmth, oblivious, chatting about her class, and I smiled, keeping my secret locked away. But the spark had been ignited. That night, lying in bed beside her, I couldn't stop thinking about the dress, the makeup, the reflection in the mirror. I felt an intoxicating mix of shame, desire, and curiosity. The transformation had opened a door I couldn't close, a hidden path toward a world I had never dared to explore. Little did I know, this innocent experiment would be the first step in a journey that would challenge everything I knew about myself, my identity, and the fragile line between who I was and who I could become. By the end of the week, the boy I had always been would feel like a distant memory, and the reflection in the mirror would no longer answer to the name Ryan. The days after that first experiment were a blur of secrecy and anticipation. Every time Emma left the apartment, no matter how briefly, my heart raced with the possibility of trying it again. I would linger in her room, fingering the fabrics of her dresses, imagining the way they would feel against my skin. I knew it was risky, dangerously so, but the thrill of it was irresistible. It started with small things. A blouse here, a skirt there. Each piece I tried on revealed another layer of myself, a hidden desire that had been quietly simmering for years. With every transformation, I discovered nuances I hadn't imagined. The way my shoulders felt smaller, the way my gait shifted, the subtle sway of my hips that felt foreign yet natural. The reflection staring back at me became a stranger and a companion, someone I longed to become more like, even as fear gnawed at the edges of my excitement. Internal conflict became my constant companion. I was ashamed, yes, but also exhilarated. I feared Emma's discovery, worried that she would see me differently, or worse, judge me. But at the same time, the freedom I felt was intoxicating. I was exploring a part of myself that had long been buried, experimenting with identity in a private theater where only I could watch. The dichotomy of desire and fear created a tension that made each moment of crossdressing feel both forbidden and thrilling. I started documenting my transformations secretly, taking photos and notes about the outfits, makeup techniques, and the sensations they evoked. It became a private ritual, a diary of metamorphosis that I could revisit in solitude. The more I immersed myself, the more I realized that this wasn't just a curiosity. It was becoming a necessity, a way to feel alive in a world that had always seemed too rigid. The physical transformation was both meticulous and exhilarating. I learned how to contour my face subtly, highlight the softness of my features, and downplay the masculine angles that stubbornly remained. I experimented with different hairstyles, curling and straightening Emma's wigs to see which suited me best. The high heels were a revelation. Awkward at first, but gradually my balance improved, and the slight elevation changed not just my height but my posture, the very essence of how I moved. Every choice was laden with anxiety. Each time I slipped into a dress, I felt a shiver of fear. What if Emma returned early? What if a neighbor saw me through the blinds? The apartment, once a place of comfort, had transformed into a stage where danger and desire coexisted. My senses were heightened. The slightest sound, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of traffic outside, anything could betray me. Yet the fear only intensified the thrill. I became obsessed with details. The feel of silk against my skin, the click of my heels on hardwood, the delicate brush of makeup. Each sensation was magnified. I learned how to walk and gesture with grace, how to tilt my head, how to soften my expressions. The reflection in the mirror became a guide, a mentor, and, at times, a judge. Each experiment taught me something new, a subtle lesson in femininity and self-expression that I could never have learned otherwise. The suspense escalated one evening when Emma had planned a late-night outing with friends. I knew she would be gone for hours, giving me the perfect opportunity to experiment with a full ensemble, a flowing dress, matching shoes, jewelry, and a carefully styled wig. I meticulously prepared, layering my makeup with precision, practicing expressions in the mirror, and rehearsing the way I would move around the apartment. The transformation was stunning. I barely recognized the reflection staring back at me. But as I admired myself, the thrill was tempered by paranoia. Every sound outside the door, every knock or creak, sent my heart into overdrive. I imagined Emma returning early, catching me in mid-transformation. The fear was almost paralyzing, yet I couldn't tear myself away. The danger amplified the experience, making it feel alive, urgent, and undeniably real. Then came the day I dared to step beyond the apartment. I had crafted an appearance I felt confident could pass, even if just for a moment. Emma's dress, carefully chosen, fit me in a way that flattered without exaggerating my remaining masculine features. The wig was secured perfectly, and my makeup subtle but transformative. I felt a surge of empowerment, mixed with a gnawing anxiety. I ventured to the corner store, heart pounding, every step a test of courage. The world outside felt different, charged with both possibility and peril. Strangers passed, oblivious, yet each glance felt loaded with judgment, imagined or real. I caught reflections in windows and store mirrors, and for the first time, felt a strange pride in the transformation. The girl in the reflection, soft, delicate, undeniably feminine, was me, and yet she wasn't. The duality was intoxicating. Returning home, exhilarated and terrified, I realized that the thrill had shifted. It was no longer just curiosity or experimentation. It had become a challenge, a game of control and secrecy. I was addicted to the transformation, to the tension, to the delicate balancing act between who I was and who I could become. But the stakes were about to rise. Emma's schedule changed unexpectedly, and she returned home earlier than anticipated one evening. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to hide evidence: clothes, wigs, makeup. My heart raced as I tried to appear nonchalant, praying she wouldn't notice the subtle traces of my experiments. Her footsteps on the stairs seemed deafening, each creak a countdown. I barely made it to the living room, pretending to watch TV, as she entered. Her eyes flickered over me, lingering for a moment longer than usual. "You've been busy?" she asked casually, but I caught the faint suspicion in her tone. My pulse quickened. The secret I had cherished for so long teetered on the brink of exposure. The thrill, the fear, the liberation, they were all entwined now. I knew I couldn't stop, not really. The transformation had revealed something profound, a hidden part of myself that demanded exploration. But with each experiment, the danger grew. One wrong move, one careless glance, and everything could unravel. And yet, I couldn't resist. The girl I saw in the mirror called to me with an urgency I could no longer ignore. She was a part of me now, inseparable from the boy I had always been. The suspense, the secrecy, and the thrill had become a way of life, a delicate dance on the edge of discovery, where every heartbeat echoed with possibility. Little did I know, the next week would push me further than I had ever imagined. The line between Ryan and the girl in the mirror would blur, and by the end of it, my life as a boy would feel like a distant memory. Every choice, every step, every trembling movement in high heels was leading me toward a transformation that would challenge not just my identity, but everything I thought I knew about myself. The week had begun with a rhythm, careful, secretive, calculated, but by midweek, the stakes had shifted dramatically. Emma's sudden business trip had left me alone in the apartment for days, a gift that I quickly realized was also a trap. Alone, I indulged further, pushing boundaries I hadn't dared before. I experimented with outfits that Emma herself might never have worn, wigs styled in ways that emphasized every delicate curve, makeup layered until the mirror reflected someone unrecognizable. Each transformation was intoxicating, yet the ever-present fear of discovery made my heart pound with an intensity one hadn't known. On the third night, I decided to attempt something audacious. I wanted to see if I could fully embrace the persona, not just in the privacy of Emma's bedroom, but in the apartment itself. I laid out a dress I had admired from afar, a silky, soft pink number that clung in all the right places. Matching heels, stockings, and a carefully styled wig completed the ensemble. As I slid the stockings at my legs, the soft fabric brushing against my skin sent shivers down my spine. This wasn't just clothing, it was armor, a veil between the world and the person I was becoming. I applied makeup meticulously, blending, contouring, highlighting. With each brushstroke, I felt a layer of my old self peel away. The reflection that stared back at me was both foreign and familiar. I practiced walking in heels, spinning slightly in the mirror, testing expressions, adjusting the tilt of my head. I could almost hear a whisper of someone else's voice in my mind, guiding me, urging me to embrace this transformation fully. Then came the sound that shattered the illusion, a key in the lock. Emma had returned early. My pulse skyrocketed as panic overtook me. The door opened, and she stepped in, luggage in hand, humming a tune I had never paid attention to before. I froze mid-step, frozen in the mirror's reflection, a perfect blend of boy and girl. Her gaze swept across the room. Her eyes lingered longer than usual, scanning every detail. "You've been busy," she said casually, but her tone carried an edge I couldn't ignore. My mind raced. Should I run? Hide? Pretend? Every instinct screamed to retreat, yet a deeper part of me, the part one had been nurturing all week, demanded that I remain. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Just cleaning up a bit," I muttered, my voice trembling. Emma tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. She set her luggage down, and I could see the curiosity, the suspicion, the flicker of recognition in her gaze. "Right," she said, almost too casually, but the tension in her voice betrayed her. I realized then that she knew, even if she didn't yet say it aloud. My mind spun as I tried to maintain composure. Every gesture, every step, every tilt of my head was calculated. The high heels made movement precarious, and the fear of toppling or revealing too much added a visceral tension. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest as I considered my options. Retreat, reveal, or continue the charade. Before I could act, Emma's phone buzzed loudly on the table. She glanced down, distracted, and I seized the moment. I moved with cautious grace, slipping behind a corner to adjust the hem of the dress. The sensation of the silk against my fingers, the gentle tug of the stockings, it all reminded me that I had never felt so exposed and alive at once. The suspense escalated further when there was a knock at the door. Another visitor. Emma's friend, unexpectedly early, was here to drop off a package. My stomach lurched. How could I hide now? I backed into the shadows, trying to blend in, my mind racing with possible explanations. The knock sounded again, louder, more insistent. Emma opened the door slightly, just enough to speak. "I'll be a minute," she murmured. I realized I had seconds to make a decision. I could either attempt to slip back into boy mode, risking tripping over my heels and drawing attention, or I could stay, fully exposed, and hope Emma's friend didn't notice. The tension coiled in my chest like a spring ready to snap. I chose the latter. Remaining in full attire, I tried to stand naturally, hoping the dim light and shadows concealed enough. Emma's friend entered, chatting casually, oblivious to the storm brewing in the apartment. My hands trembled as I clutched the edge of a table, and the high heels clicked precariously on the hardwood floor. Each step was a gamble. Emma's eyes flicked to me, her expression unreadable. My heart raced, and for a moment, I thought she might reveal everything, confront me, or perhaps even laugh. But she didn't. Instead, she turned her attention to the conversation with her friend, leaving me suspended in a liminal space, both exhilarated and terrified. Then came the catastrophe. As I adjusted my wig, a piece caught on the edge of a chair. Pulling it loose, the wig slipped partially, revealing the boy beneath, and I froze. Emma's friend tilted her head, noticing, and my panic surged. The seconds stretched into an eternity as I tried to cover, trying to laugh it off, trying to pretend nothing had happened. Emma's hand reached out subtly, adjusting the wig back into place, without saying a word. The gesture, small and silent, was a lifeline. My pulse slowed slightly, but only slightly, because I knew the danger was far from over. Each moment hereafter was a delicate dance, a test of nerves and poise. Every click of the heels, every flicker of the mirror, every subtle movement a potential revelation. The tension intensified when a neighbor appeared at the door unexpectedly, seeking Emma. My body froze mid-movement, my reflection caught in the mirror, a perfect picture of vulnerability. Emma, realizing the threat, subtly maneuvered to shield me, her body slightly in front, her hand guiding me to remain still. The neighbor's knock and inquiry became a test of endurance. Could I maintain the illusion? Could I survive this evening without exposure? Minutes felt like hours as the interaction concluded. The neighbor left. Emma whispered a quiet, "You're lucky tonight," and I exhaled with a trembling relief. But the adrenaline lingered, buzzing in my veins, keeping me hyper-aware of every sensation. The softness of the dress, the precariousness of the heels, the way my body moved differently now, constrained and liberated at once. That night, after the apartment fell silent, I sat in front of the mirror again, removing the wig and makeup slowly. The boy I had been, the girl I had become, they both stared back at me, intertwined in ways I hadn't anticipated. The line between identities was blurred, nearly erased. I realized that this was more than experimentation now. The transformation had claimed a part of me permanently. Exhausted but exhilarated, I knew the climax of this week was far from over. The secret, the thrill, and the danger had bonded tightly, and there was no going back. Every choice, every step, every risk had led me to this tipping point. The next days would test the limits of identity, fear, and desire. And by the end, I would see clearly that the boy I had been was no longer the person I recognized. The apartment had finally settled into silence. Emma was in the kitchen, her movements quiet but deliberate, and I sat in the living room, still fully dressed, still in heels, my reflection catching in every mirror around me. The adrenaline that had gripped me all evening now morphed into a tense exhaustion. My body ached from balancing on the heels, my fingers trembled from gripping the fabric of the dress, and yet a strange exhilaration lingered. I was both terrified and alive in a way I had never known. I leaned back against the couch, trying to steady my racing thoughts. Every sound, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the apartment, Emma's footsteps, felt amplified. I kept replaying the events in my mind, the wig slipping, the neighbor's sudden appearance, Emma's subtle shielding gestures. Each moment had been a test, and I had survived barely. But survival didn't erase the reality. My secret was fragile, and my double life was now more dangerous than ever. Emma emerged from the kitchen with a glass of water, her eyes briefly meeting mine in the mirror. There was a flicker in her gaze, a mix of amusement, curiosity, and something unreadable. She didn't say a word about what had happened, didn't acknowledge the tightrope I had walked tonight. But I knew she had noticed. I knew she understood, even if she pretended otherwise. That silent acknowledgement was more terrifying than any confrontation. I tried to focus on removing the outfit, peeling off the stockings and slipping out of the heels, but my hands were unsteady. The dress felt like a second skin now, and the idea of shedding it brought a pang of unease. Was it really just clothing, or had it become a part of me? The reflection in the mirror made me pause. The face staring back wasn't entirely mine anymore. The boy I had been and the girl I had become were tangled together, inseparable. A sudden sound from the hallway froze me, footsteps approaching the door. My pulse spiked, my chest tightened. Emma looked up too, and her expression shifted slightly, just enough for me to sense something. The door handle rattled, and my stomach dropped. Whoever it was didn't seem to know I was here, but the threat of discovery surged through me like electricity. The handle turned, slowly, deliberately. My mind raced. Should I try to hide? Should I pretend to be asleep? Every option seemed like a trap. I backed toward the shadows, hoping the dim light would conceal me, but the heels made silent movement impossible. The figure at the door pushed it open just slightly. A stranger, someone I didn't recognize, yet the familiarity of their posture sent a shiver down my spine. Emma's voice cut through the tension, calm but firm. "Can I help you?" she asked, masking any hint of suspicion. The stranger paused, and I caught a glimpse of their face, an expression that hinted they weren't just visiting for a casual chat. My heart lurched. Something about this moment felt wrong, dangerous, inevitable. The stranger spoke, their tone casual, but edged with curiosity. "I was just dropping something off for Ryan," they said. My blood ran cold. How did they know my name? How could they possibly have been in the apartment just now? Emma's gaze shifted toward me, a silent question in her eyes. My mind scrambled, searching for a believable excuse, a way to explain why I was still dressed like this. But before I could respond, the stranger's eyes flicked past Emma and caught mine in the mirror. Their expression froze, a mixture of shock and intrigue. I felt as if time had stopped. For a brief, suspended moment, the world narrowed to the reflection in the glass, the stranger's stare, and the pounding of my heart in my ears. I realized, with a sinking certainty, that my secret was no longer mine alone. The careful balance I had maintained, the dual identity I had nurtured in private, was on the verge of unraveling. Emma's hand reached for mine, her fingers brushing against the delicate skin of my wrist through the fabric of the dress. The gesture was protective, grounding, yet also terrifying. It reminded me that she knew, that she had been part of this secret all along, and yet she hadn't warned me. The implications twisted in my mind. Was she testing me? Watching me? Or had she orchestrated this entire ordeal? The stranger took a cautious step forward, their eyes locked on the reflection. I held my breath, every muscle tense, every nerve screaming. The air between us crackled with suspense, charged with the unspoken truth that hung heavy in the room. And then, just as suddenly, they smiled, a small, enigmatic smile that made my stomach twist in confusion and dread. Emma's eyes met mine once more, and I saw something I hadn't expected, a hint of mischief, a spark of approval, and a warning all at once. My heart pounded, my mind reeled, and I knew that the events of this night were far from over. The stranger's presence, Emma's gaze, the precariousness of my transformation, it all converged into a single, undeniable reality. My life as a boy was gone, and the consequences of this new identity were only beginning to unfold. The door creaked wider, and the stranger stepped inside. I felt the weight of inevitability pressing down, the thrill and terror of exposure intertwining. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to protect the fragile balance I had fought to maintain. Yet a part of me, the part that had reveled in this transformation all week, felt a rush of exhilaration. As the apartment filled with tension, and my reflection stared back at me with wide, uncertain eyes, I realized one thing with absolute clarity: nothing would ever be the same again. The secret was no longer mine alone, and the week of experimentation, fear, and thrill had led to this moment, a moment poised on the edge of revelation, where one wrong move could shatter everything. And then, just as the stranger spoke a single, deliberate word, my blood ran cold.